Hello there. So in my last video, I explained to you that I was waiting for my signed contracts to arrive from my Chinese buyer, and that was all that was outstanding before we could exchange on both my sale and my purchase, with the intention of completing on my purchase tomorrow. So what happened? The contracts did arrive, but we didn't exchange on Monday. So let me go into a bit more detail. It was a very stressful week, as you might be able to tell by my demeanour. So the contracts arrived Monday. I got a phone call from my solicitor saying we're ready to exchange. Anyway, the day kind of progresses. My stress level incrementally rises each hour like a water butt filling up. And we get to 4:45 and I get a phone call from my solicitor to say that actually we're not going to exchange today because a solicitor in the chain has contacted the wrong client, and now it's too late to get in touch with the correct client, arrange and confirm everything and do the exchange. So we couldn't exchange on Monday. But don't worry, because we will exchange tomorrow, i.e. Tuesday. Tuesday arrived, and by I think lunchtime I received a phone call from my solicitor to say actually we're not going to exchange today either, because we need to wait for the funds to arrive with your buyer's solicitor. So because the exchange and completion dates were so close together, 4 days apart, they decided that actually they wanted all of the buyer's funds in place. So we just had to wait for the funds to arrive at my buyer's solicitor, and then we'd be ready. Well, they didn't arrive on Tuesday. We get to Wednesday. By 10 p.m. on Wednesday, I'd received a message from my seller directly telling me that if we don't exchange by 1 p.m, then we're going to have to change the completion date for my purchase. My seller is moving into rental accommodation while they wait for a new build to be built, so they would lose that rental. They'd have to wait a few more weeks to sign a rental agreement, so it would have a knock-on effect. So there was a bit of urgency to get the contracts exchanged by 1 p.m. on Wednesday, but the funds didn't arrive. They didn't arrive at 1 o'clock. They didn't arrive by 5 o'clock on Wednesday. Now, one of the most stressful things about this whole process has been the lack of information and updates from people, or kind of partial information. And again, I wasn't aware of the reason that the funds hadn't arrived. I wasn't aware what the problem was. All I heard was that they were struggling to make the payment, which didn't sound great. But they promised me the payment would be there shortly. So it didn't arrive on Wednesday, and it didn't arrive on Thursday either. And as you can imagine, just each hour that goes past, I am getting more and more stressed and panicky that it's all about to go wrong. Friday comes. We might not be able to actually complete until October. And what that essentially would mean is that we passed the stamp duty deadline. Would cost me personally about $3,000 in fees. So not a great outcome. I think you'll agree. So even more panicked at that point. The funds didn't arrive on Friday either. And again, no update as to what the actual reason was as to why. Just they were trying to make the payment, but it kept getting rejected, and they keep trying, they keep phoning. So my buyer is actually not Chinese at all, I should say. My buyer is actually from Hong Kong. The money, I found out, was stored in an English bank account, and they were just trying to do a simple transfer from an English bank account A to the solicitor's bank account B. Now, the seller of the property that I was buying found a few articles online that kind of were quite genuinely concerning, saying that if you're Chinese, you're restricted from buying properties abroad, and not only that, but actually transferring more than $50,000 worth of foreign currency from a Chinese bank account to a British or any foreign bank account is prohibited in China, $50,000 a year. Now, there are ways around it, but still, not really a fantastic situation to find yourself in. But of course, I wasn't really sure whether or not that even applied in this instance. After all, my buyer is a Hong Kong national, not a Chinese national, which actually are sort of the same thing, because China obviously owns Hong Kong, even though it's got its own sort of separate government. And you know that the tensions, though, have kind of risen in Hong Kong recently. I got the impression that my seller was very nervous about it. I was nervous about it, but I was hoping that it would work out okay. Well, the funds didn't arrive on Friday, but I thought, well, at least the weekend is approaching, so I can relax. No news is good news. And hopefully the funds will arrive next week. At 5:30 on Friday evening, on the way to get my Friday fish and chips, I received a phone call from my seller's estate agent, basically asking me how I was, whether there were any updates on the funds, on the arrival of the funds. And by the way, if you don't exchange by Thursday next week and the funds don't arrive, your seller is going to start showing people around the house you want to buy, and he'll sell it to someone else. He wants to sell it to you, and if the money arrives, he'll sell it to you, but he is going to stick the house back on the market. So just, we didn't want you to be concerned. And obviously I was very concerned that the house I'd invested 4 months and thousands of pounds into purchasing was going to go back on the market, and I would potentially lose it, potentially sell my current place and have nowhere to move to. I was quite stressed about it. I was very polite to the lady on the phone. Fast forward to 11:30 p.m. on Friday night. I'm browsing Rightmove, thinking I better look at other properties on Rightmove, see what's available. And I happen to notice that actually my onward purchase is listed on there, which I found saddening. So I wrote a long email at 11:30 at night, and I don't recommend you do that. Which actually, reading it back, was quite surprisingly calm. It was firm. It was reasonable, saying that we really need to wait and see what happens with my sale and the exchange of the funds before we jump to conclusions about it falling through. I did say in that email, and it's probably the biggest mistake I made in that email, I passed a proportion of the blame onto my seller's estate agent, because I felt that they had incorrectly promised very optimistic dates throughout the process, told my seller essentially that I would be ready to complete in July, and that guided the timeline of them getting their onward rental and things like that, organising their removal, and that those figures, those dates, were just pulled out of the air, and now I was suffering as a result of it. And it wasn't even, what I wrote wasn't even as rude as that, to be honest. So I didn't get much sleep that night. 2 a.m. I decided that I would try and contact my buyer directly. Got her email address and contacted her directly to ask why the funds hadn't been paid and what the problem was. A couple of hours later, she replied and explained the situation. So she said she'd been trying to make the payment for 5 days straight. She's been on the phone every night to the UK, so she confirmed that the bank account was in the UK until 2 a.m. Hong Kong time, which is about 6 o'clock UK time. She said that each time the payment had failed, but to cut a long story short, she discovered that she thinks she knows the reason why the payment hadn't gone through. Turned out with the first payment, the account name had been entered incorrectly, and these days, if you put the wrong account name in, if the account name for your intended payment doesn't match what's actually listed as the account name on their system, then the payment just doesn't go through. They don't tell you why, because it's an anti-fraud measure. But it was spotted that the account name was wrong. They've corrected it, made the payment, and it should now arrive by 3:30 p.m. on Monday. So that's a little bit of a relief. I forwarded that to my seller, and he was grateful and said it sounded promising, but obviously there's been a lot of promise up to this point. I mean, that's maybe a conversation for another time. Yes, there have been many delays in this process, many upsetting and stressful times, but crucially, each one of those events has resolved. And actually, when you actually look at the time frames of those delays, they are not that significant. We had to wait something like 5 days for the signed contract to arrive from when it actually was received in Hong Kong to coming back to the UK. Not that unreasonable. And indeed, the whole process is actually we're about 16 weeks in, which is the upper end of the average time between offer acceptance and completion. So it's not that unusual. So the listing remained up. Each hour that the listing is up stresses me out because it makes me feel like somebody's going to put in a higher offer. So the weekend passes. I managed, I think, somehow to forget about it a little bit. Monday arrives and my stress levels ramp up considerably over the course of the day. I convinced myself that the payment should arrive instantly by 9 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't. It doesn't arrive at 10, 11, 12, 1 or 2, or indeed 3 o'clock. So the payment was supposed to arrive by 3:30 on Monday, and again, it didn't. So by this point, I'm really quite distressed. I think that's the way to describe it. Why hasn't the payment arrived? What the hell is going on? My solicitor's on holiday for a day, so there's somebody standing in for him, which, she was very good actually. She did give me updates, and it's not her case, so good on her for doing that. 3:30, the money doesn't arrive. I get an email to say the money hasn't arrived with the solicitor, but it's hopefully going to arrive soon. I get a panicked email saying that my buyer is on the phone to their bank trying to sort it out. Then at 4:45, I get an email to say the money is in, it's arrived, we're ready to exchange. The stress instantly lifts, but actually at this point I'm so stressed that I can't actually shake the stress at all. I just feel a little bit of relief, but still a huge amount of stress. But we've left it so late in the day that we can't exchange on Monday. So we've got to wait. I've got to have another night's sleep before we can exchange. Cut to Tuesday. I get an email to say that my solicitor is chasing the various parties to agree a completion date. So if we exchange today, when can we complete? Crucially, will we be able to now complete before the end of September and save the extra stamp duty costs? I hear nothing from my solicitor after he's tried to contact the various parties. He rejects one of my calls, which is fine because he was probably getting on with it. Then, almost in the nick of time, at 2:30, we exchange contracts. We exchange contracts Tuesday this week, and which is fantastic news. I am immeasurably relieved about it. I feel like the stress has had an almost permanent, it's left an indelible mark on me. But it will get better, I'm sure. My sale completes tomorrow, that's Friday. My purchase completes on the 30th of September, so right on the edge of the stamp duty deadline, which is a huge relief to me. Didn't really want to spend another £3,000. But now, because so many things have gone wrong during this process, because it's been so drawn out and so many things have gone wrong and unexpected turns have happened, there are 3 possibilities, 3 bad situations that are going through my mind, and they're remote. I think we are pretty home and dry, which I'm letting myself kind of believe. 1, my buyer pulls out before tomorrow. Why would they do that? We've exchanged, they've paid the deposit, they would lose it, so why would they do that? My seller pulls out. Why would he do that? The mortgage. So I've got a mortgage application. It turns out mortgage providers can actually withdraw a mortgage offer up to the day of, in fact, up to the point of completion. My circumstances haven't changed at all. In fact, my PAYE salary is rising by a grand total of about £600 this year. None of my other details have changed since the application was put in and approved, and my credit score is identical. So it should be absolutely home and dry now, and I am immensely relieved. The next update I will give you on this will be a completion of my purchase. So I'm not going to give you an update tomorrow. Just assume that it goes ahead unless you hear any other information. But I can tell you that the last week has been one of the most stressful weeks of my life. I'm never moving again. Once this is done, this is it. I'm going to do this bungalow up and enjoy it. I would just like to say thank you to my Patreons and channel members who have given me a great deal of financial and also emotional support over the last few weeks. You know who you are. It is genuinely appreciated, because when you are just alone and your mind is whirring round, just to get these sort of upbeat and reassuring comments from you really does actually mean a lot to me. So thank you very much. Thank you to my loyal Patreons, Jennifer Jones, George Foot, Magnanimous Meg and Ross Carter, who are extremely generous, and to my other Patreons who are scrolling down the screen now. They all get early access to my videos. Thank you for watching. Wish me luck, and I shall see you next time for another video. Oh, and sorry, this video is late.